My husband, Henry, got injured while on a trip where he was cheating and had to be taken to the hospital. He spewed nothing but abusive words from his mouth. Look at this terrible injury. I can't stand the itchiness all over my body because of these bandages. Wipe me down already. Isn't it a wife's duty to care for her husband? A wife's duty to care for her husband? After you've cheated on me with my own sister, Camila? No way I'm taking care of a husband who didn't even bother to worry about me when I was sick. I don't owe you anything anymore. What did you say? Henry, reaching the peak of his frustration at my words, tried to lash out at me but fell out of the bed. The fall caused him such severe pain in his right leg that he screamed loud enough to be heard throughout the hospital. Charlotte! No, it's not me. The real person isn't me. While saying this, Camila opened the curtain of the bed next to hers. The moment I saw the person behind the curtain, I felt a shock through my body as if I'd been hit with a blunt object. What? Why? Lying on the bed was unmistakably that person. I'm Charlotte, a 28-year-old office worker. After graduating from college, I joined a cosmetics company. Life as a working adult was far tougher than I had imagined, both physically and mentally, but I was happy to be working at the company I had always admired. My days were busy yet fulfilling, and it was around this time that I became accustomed to my job. I met Henry, who would later become my husband, through a friend's introduction. Henry worked for a major corporation and was what you'd call an elite, having graduated from a top university. He was quick-thinking and knowledgeable, with a strong reputation among both his juniors and superiors. Despite this, he never put on airs, rather, he was down-to-earth and easy to talk to. He listened seriously to my work-related troubles and gave me sound advice. So when Henry proposed to me, asking me to go out with him on the premise of marriage, I was so surprised that I screamed out loud. Now, 3 years into our marriage, I am still doing well in my job. We don't have children yet, but Henry and I live happily together. My parents' house where I grew up is about an hour's drive from the city center where we live. They had a great relationship and loved traveling together. They were what you'd call a model couple, even from their daughter's point of view. However, my kind father passed away a few years ago due to illness. At that time, I was of course shocked by my father's death, but even more so by the fact that my mother was now alone. I often went back to my parents' house because I was worried about my mom. It was a bit of a sensitive timing, but right after my dad's death, my sister Camila got divorced and returned home. So, feeling reassured that Camila was there for Mom, Henry and I only visited home once or twice a year to check in. Our relationship with my family was good, and to outsiders, we must have seemed like a couple with no issues. However, something had been bothering me lately. Lately, Henry has been coming home after midnight quite frequently. When I asked him about it, he'd brush it off, saying, "It's a busy season at work." You work too, so you must understand what that's like. Of course, I understand the difficulties of a busy period well. Piles of unprocessed documents, non-stop phone calls, and looming deadlines. Just thinking about it gives me a headache. But even when you were busy before, you never came home in the middle of the night, right? That's why I'm worried. Geez, just like your mom said, you worry too much. Seeing his expression clearly showing annoyance, I decided not to press any further. All right, sorry for bothering you when you're tired. The bath's ready, go relax. He just grunted in response and headed to bath. I wondered when Henry had become so cold. He used to never act like this, even when busy with work. Do people change over time in a marriage? While the uneasy feelings lingered, I decided to push them aside and go to bed. That's when I noticed something brightly colored peeking out of Henry's bag left on the sofa. I hesitated to snoop through his things, but curiosity got the better of me. As soon as I saw what it was, all the feelings I'd just suppressed came flooding back. This is Camila's handkerchief, the one I gifted her. I recognized it immediately. I had custom ordered it from her favorite brand for her birthday last year. Even getting her name embroidered on it, she loved it. Unpleasant thoughts began to swirl in my mind. but there was no use in dwelling on them. I had work in the morning, but I knew I couldn't sleep without clearing this up. After a while, Henry came out of the bath and into the bedroom. "Hey Henry, sorry to bring this up before bed, but there's something I need to ask." He looked annoyed again, but I pressed on. "It's about this." I showed him Camila's handkerchief. His face, flushed from the bath, suddenly drained of color. "I found this in your work bag." "It's Camila's, right? Why do you have it?" "I remembered it because I gave it to her last year." "Oh, this is Camila's?" "I didn't realize. I must have forgotten to return it after borrowing it the last time we visited your family home." "I see. Well, we'll have to return it next time we see her. It's her favorite, after all." "Right, I'll do that." "Is that all you wanted to ask?" "I'm going to sleep now." Henry covered himself with the blanket and fell asleep as if indicating he had nothing more to say. This left me with an even greater sense of unease, and I ended up not being able to sleep until dawn. Since that incident, I've had many sleepless nights and finally fell ill. I could tell I had a fever without even checking, my body felt like lead, and I had a constant sharp pain in my head. It seemed like I caught a cold from pushing myself too hard with work and household chores while sleep-deprived. When I called in sick to work, they told me to go to the doctor, but I felt too weak to even drive or walk to the clinic. Henry had already left for work, so I couldn't ask him to take me. Reluctantly, I decided to spend the day resting in bed. I couldn't help but think that Henry, the way he used to be, would have surely taken care of me. Such thoughts made me sad, so I gently closed my eyes to push away the emotions. When I woke up, the setting sun was shining through the window, illuminating the houseplant on the windowsill. It seemed I had slept for quite a while. Thanks to a good night's sleep for the first time in ages, my terrible headache had eased and I felt refreshed. However, I still didn't feel well enough to go outside energetically, so I picked up my smartphone to ask Henry to buy some medicine and groceries for dinner. I felt bad bothering him when he seemed busy, but I thought I should allow myself some leeway when sick and called him right away. "Hello, Henry? It's me." "What is it, Charlotte?" "I'm still at work, what do you need?" "Just what is it, Charlotte?" I wanted to retort that it's no way to speak to his wife, but I didn't have the energy for an argument and held back. "Sorry to bother you at work. I've been running a fever since this morning and had to call out sick from work. The fever hasn't gone down, so I can't go out shopping. Could you pick up some things on your way home?" "Sick, huh? Managing your health is part of being a professional, you know. Aren't you lacking some self-awareness? Besides, I'm too busy with work today to come home, so you'll need to do the shopping yourself. Don't rely too much on others, or you'll get spoiled. I've got to go, my boss is calling." With that, Henry abruptly ended the call, as if to say he didn't have a second to spare for me. Stunned, I listened to the dial tone and couldn't move for a while, phone still pressed to my ear. Why would he speak to a sick person like that? Was he really that reluctant to talk to me, even though I was unwell? In the early days of our marriage, he was the first to worry and take great care of me when I was sick. He would buy pudding and sports drinks from the drugstore, and even called my mom to ask what she used to make for me when I was feverish and then cook it for me. Why had Henry become so cold? Feeling my fever rise again, I just drank some chilled mineral water from the fridge and went back to bed, trying not to think about anything. Henry finally returned home late the next night. By then, I had fully recovered and managed to go to work that day. I was planning to go to bed early since I was still recuperating, but I had something I needed to talk to Henry about and waited for him to return. The show I wanted to watch was over, and I was idly watching a not-so-interesting infomercial when I heard the door open. I quickly went to the entrance. "Welcome back. You had a tough day at work, huh?" "Yeah. Dinner and a bath are both ready. What will you do?" "I don't need either. I'm too tired. Unlike you, I can't just take a day off." I thought he could at least show some concern for his sick wife, but given his attitude on the phone yesterday, I already knew his stance towards me and it didn't bother me. sorry to bring this up right after you got home, but there's something I need to tell you. What now? I want to go to bed, so make it quick. Okay. Today at work, my boss asked if I could go on a business trip next week. I was hesitant because of the household chores, but it's just for 2 to 3 days, so I accepted. I need you to take care of the house while I'm gone. Since getting married, I've always taken care of all the household chores by myself. I wondered what kind of sarcastic remark Henry would make, considering he can barely do laundry, but his reaction was different from what I expected. A business trip, huh? When exactly next week? From next Tuesday. I haven't finalized the return date yet. I'll confirm it with my boss tomorrow and let you know. Tuesday, okay. Got it. Oh, and email me as soon as you know your return date. He emphasized that, looking a bit pleased, then headed towards the bathroom. Aren't you going to bed, Henry? Changed my mind. You prepared the bath, so I'll freshen up before sleeping. Where did his grumpy attitude from earlier go? Hearing about the business trip, he seemed almost excited, which surely wasn't my imagination. And it's been a while since he mentioned anything I prepared for him. In the past, I might have been happy about that, but now it just seems suspicious. Could it be? I brushed off the thought. There was no evidence, and the trip hadn't even started yet. However, that moment of apparent joy was enough to deepen my distrust of Henry. In the days leading up to the trip, Henry kept confirming the return date, saying things like, "Leave the house to me," and "Just focus on your work during the trip," phrases he normally wouldn't use. Despite being busy, he even came to the airport to see me off on the day of the trip. "Take care. See you Thursday," he said, waving and smiling as I left. Sitting in my seat on the plane, I pondered over Henry's recent behavior. His excitement at hearing about the trip, his frequent late returns, and Camila's handkerchief in his bag. Camila's handkerchief. Could it be? Trying to shake off the unpleasant suspicion that suddenly came to mind, I stood up and headed towards the train's deck. I then searched for my family's phone number in my smartphone and pressed the screen. I repeated to myself several times in my mind, just in case. "Hello? Who is this?" "Hi, Mom, it's Charlotte." "Is that you?" "Oh, what a surprise! You calling is quite rare. What's up? Aren't you supposed to be at work now?" "Actually, I'm on a business trip right now, on the plane. Just had some time, so I thought I'd call. I haven't contacted you since I last visited. Are you doing all right? No colds or anything?" "I'm fine." A business trip sounds exciting, almost like a vacation. "I'm not going for sightseeing, it's work, Mom. You and your love for traveling never change. Also, how is Camila? Any changes with her?" "Camila? She's as lively as ever, going to work regularly." "Oh, but she's off today. She's been bustling around since this morning, woke me up earlier than usual. Off today. Does she have plans to go out with someone?" The word "off" stirred unease in me. Yes, she's been getting ready to go out all morning, and it looks like she'll be leaving soon. She's dressed up more than usual. Maybe she's got a boyfriend now? The just in case I had been chanting in my mind faded away, replaced by a growing pounding in my heart. As I fell silent, lost for words, my mother continued talking, seemingly happy, thinking Camila might have found someone new. I slowly moved the phone away from my ear, feeling my mother's voice fade into the distance. Before I knew it, I had pressed the end call button, staring at the phone screen while leaning against the door. After a while, I opened the call screen again and pressed the dial button. That night, after work was done and I was lying in the hotel bed, fatigue hit me like a ton of bricks, as if my entire body was being crushed by concrete. Of course, during work, I tried not to think about Henry and Camila, focusing entirely on the meetings with clients. There's no evidence yet. So, there's no use in thinking about it. But my brain was desperately trying to gather anything that could be evidence. Henry and Camila? Since when? Are they together even now, while I'm here? No, maybe Camila just dressed up for some other reason. Maybe Henry really is just busy with work. But then, why did he seem so elated? Why doesn't he show any concern for me? What about Camila's handkerchief? I thought about calling my mother again, but asking too many times about Camila in one day would seem suspicious. And even if they were meeting, Camila wouldn't tell the truth to my mother. Oh. No, this isn't right. Maybe I'm thinking too much into this. Anyway, I need to focus on my work for now. On Thursday night, after successfully completing my 3-day business trip, I relaxed on the sofa at home. Surprisingly, Henry had already come home, and for the first time in a while, we were spending some quality time together. Was everything okay at home while I was gone? Yeah, no problems. And 3 days felt shorter than I expected. Really? It felt really long to me. And I was relieved to see the house wasn't as messy as I thought it would be. You must have eaten out, right? Yeah, mostly fast food. It turns out I can manage household chores pretty well even without you. That's good to hear. Oh, I bought some famous souvenirs, want to try them together? He agreed, so I quickly prepared some tea and snacks. It was rare for us to have a calm conversation like this. This could be a good opportunity to check about Camila. So, what did you do while I was on my trip? What? Of course, I was working. What, do you think I was cheating or something? I was taken aback when he mentioned cheating. I hadn't expected that response. Sorry, that's not what I meant. I was just curious since I've never left home alone since we got married. Even when going to my parents' house, we went together. I casually mentioned parents' house, but Henry's expression didn't change. Right, speaking of parents, I talked to Mom on the plane, and she mentioned that Camila might have a boyfriend. I was so surprised. She hasn't shown any interest in men since her divorce. Oh, Camila has a boyfriend? That's good for her, right? A new step forward. Yeah, right. Henry casually munched on the snacks, showing no signs of disturbance. Seeing how calm he was, I decided not to pursue it further. A few days later, Henry was scheduled to go on an out-of-state business trip. Unlike mine, it was for a longer period. If his presentation went well, it could lead to a significant promotion, so he was quite enthusiastic. Naturally, or maybe because of the preparation, he started coming home later than usual. I recognized this excited behavior of his. It was the same as when I had told him about my business trip. On the night before his departure, Henry went out to the convenience store, saying he had forgotten to buy something. Seizing the opportunity, I went to the bedroom to check his suitcase, hoping to find something incriminating. Luckily, the suitcase was left open, convenient for snooping. I reached in to gather any evidence, but everything about his belongings felt off. Is he really going on a business trip? I wondered. The guidebook for tourists was hidden in the suitcase, with post-it notes clearly visible from the outside. When I opened it, the top-rated restaurant had been circled in red, with a note like reservation at 1830 written beside it. Additionally, instead of the usual white work shirts, there were stylish new shirts with tags still on, shoes, and a hat that one would typically wear in a resort area. Going to a tourist restaurant with a client seemed absurd, and there was no sign of the usual work attire. He didn't even prepare his usual work laptop or the documents he claimed to be working on so enthusiastically. It's almost as if he was preparing for a trip with someone. I unconsciously bit my lip so hard that I tasted a hint of blood in my mouth. I quickly put the guidebook back in its place with trembling hands and quietly left the bedroom before Henry returned. The next day, Henry left the house early in the morning. To avoid suspicion, he wore his usual suit and leather shoes instead of the stylish clothes I saw yesterday. I watched his back through the slowly closing door, holding back the dark feelings I had towards him. I tightly clenched my fist, channeling the dark feelings towards Henry that had been lingering in my heart. Once the door clicked shut, I hurriedly made a call to one place, my parents' house. If Henry left at this time, Camila would have likely already departed too, so I wanted to check with my mother. I made the call to check with my mother, assuming that if Henry left the house at this time, Camila would have likely already departed as well. But there was no answer. Is Mom still asleep? I thought, feeling a bit guilty, and decided to hang up. I wanted to confirm about Henry and Camila as soon as possible, but I had work today and planned to call again during lunch break. With that thought, I redirected my focus and started preparing for work. But later, an unexpected source would reveal the truth about Henry and Camila. In the middle of compiling documents for the next meeting, my private phone rang. Hello? I'm calling from St. Mary's Memorial Hospital. Am I speaking with Mrs. Henry Brown? The hospital. Why is the hospital calling? And about Henry? Yes, that's me. Did something happen to Henry? We'll explain in detail once you arrive at the hospital, but he's been injured and we urgently need you to visit. I learned that Henry had slipped and fractured his leg while at a hot spring on his trip and was rushed to a local hospital. Apparently, his life wasn't in danger. After explaining the situation to my boss, I hurried to the hospital. On the way there, I called Henry's company. If he was supposed to be on a business trip, they would have been informed of his hospitalization. Excuse me for disturbing you. This is Charlotte Brown, Henry's wife. I need to confirm something about my husband's hospitalization during his supposed business trip. I'm not quite following. You said Henry is hospitalized during a business trip? I'm sorry, but there must be some mistake. What do you mean? He's currently on an extended vacation, as per his request. We have no record of him being assigned any business trip. He told us he was going on a trip with you. Henry's boss sounded confused, and my feelings of apology mixed with anger towards Henry. I see. I apologize for interrupting your busy schedule. I'll contact you again later. Saying that, I ended the call, sighed deeply, and tried to calm myself down. Just as I suspected, Henry had lied about going on a business trip and had actually gone on a vacation. Moreover, he had even filed a vacation request at his company, claiming he was going on a trip with me. My stomach churned with anger, but the fact remained that Henry had fractured his leg and was hospitalized. With the little bit of conscience I still had, I hurried to the hospital, worried about him. The hospital where Henry was admitted was located about 2 hours from the city center. This area is a popular resort destination, and on the train there, I saw many couples and families likely on their way to create happy memories. However, I had no room in my heart to look at them fondly in my current state. After arriving at the hospital, I quickly completed the check-in process and received a visitor's badge. Hanging it around my neck, I followed the nurse's directions to Henry's room. I steadied my breathing and gently opened the door to enter. Henry, and Camila too. As I expected, my sister Camila was sitting next to Henry's bed on a pipe chair. Henry appeared to have fractured his right leg, which was bandaged and suspended. His forehead had a bruise that had turned from blue to black, visible beside a wet compress, and looked painfully swollen. Despite the serious injury, he seemed able to speak. Look at you, getting into such a state. You really are pitiful, Henry. What? Is that your first reaction to your husband who's seriously injured? Don't you have any words of concern? Why should I be concerned? Who was it that didn't say a word when I was down with a cold? I was busy with work. How was I supposed to know you had a cold? Apparently, Henry had no memory of the time I asked him to do shopping when I was ill or his sarcastic remarks about me getting spoiled. We shouldn't be talking about this now. Look at this serious injury. My whole body itches because of these bandages. Wipe me down already. It's a wife's duty to take care of her husband. Henry seemed incredibly irritated. It's not surprising. No one would expect to fracture their leg and become immobile while enjoying a trip with Camila. Absolutely not. I'm also tired from working every day. And taking care of a husband who didn't even bother to worry about me when I was sick is impossible. I owe you nothing anymore. What? At my words, Henry, who had reached the peak of his irritation, attempted to lunge at me in a fit of rage. However, due to his fractured leg and inability to move his lower body properly, he inevitably lost his balance and fell out of the bed. The impact seemed to cause excruciating pain in his right leg, prompting him to let out a scream that echoed throughout the hospital. Hearing this, several nurses rushed into the room in a panic. The nurses asked what had happened, both to Camila and me, but I just coldly looked down at Henry. As the nurses were putting him back in bed and attending to him again, I continued to confront him. "So, taking care of husband is a wife's duty, you say? How dare you say that after cheating on me with my own sister?" I shouted loud enough for everyone in the room to hear and thrust several photos I had hidden in my bag at Henry and Camila. The nurses looked shocked, alternating their glances between the photos and the three of us. Yes, on the day I told Henry the first was going on a business trip. His overjoyed reaction and Camila's behavior had bothered me so much that I had hired a detective agency to monitor them during the 3 days I was away. The result was blatantly obvious. The photos showed Henry meeting up with Camila in front of a hotel and going inside together. Perhaps affected by the exposure in front of the nurses, Camila began to visibly tremble and show signs of intense distress. She shook her head vigorously and, with a trembling voice, uttered a shocking revelation. "No, it's not me. I'm not the one. The real person isn't me." Saying this, Camila opened the curtain of the bed next to her. The moment I saw the person behind the curtain, it felt like a blunt object had struck my entire body. "What? Why is Mom in the bed?" Lying in the bed, without a doubt, was my mother, Victoria. Moreover, she had suffered worse injuries than Henry, with both legs suspended from the ceiling. "What's going on? Why is Mom here?" "Ah. Charlotte, I'll tell you everything, just calm down and listen." Seeing my intense confusion, Camila regained her composure and began to explain slowly. Henry's affair wasn't with me. The real person he was cheating with was our mother. The moment I heard Camila's words, I felt the blood drain from my entire body. I was too shocked to utter a word. Henry and my mother? Of course it wasn't me who was traveling with Henry, but Mom. They were in a bath together when Henry fell down and rushed to her, and she slipped and was taken away with him. My own mother taking a bath with my husband. Never did I imagine I would hear such a terrifying reality in this world. It's truly unbelievable. You didn't know, but after our dad died, Mom was really depressed. Even after I divorced and returned home, she cried every day about feeling lonely. So, when you and Henry came to visit, I think she became envious of your close relationship and couldn't bear it anymore. Without me knowing, she and Henry had secretly exchanged contact information. I don't want to hear any more excuses. And you know what, Camila? You knew everything from the start, didn't you? The idea of a mother having an affair with her daughter's husband is just so abnormal. Why did you keep it a secret from me? That's because, after Henry and Mom's relationship became serious, I was desperately trying to make sure you wouldn't find out. When Mom asked me to pretend to be Henry's affair partner in case you got suspicious, I couldn't refuse her request. You couldn't refuse? Did you even think about how I would feel for a moment at that time? I had just gone through a divorce myself, and I felt more sympathy for Mom, who was left alone, than for you. Plus, after she started seeing Henry, she stopped crying, and that made things much easier for me too. How selfish can people be? It's unbelievable that these self-centered individuals are my family. And Henry, with his twisted morals, having an affair with my own mother without any remorse. The relationship between my husband and me was thrown into chaos just to alleviate my mother's loneliness, my feelings completely trampled upon. And Camila, who meticulously orchestrated a deception to deceive even the detectives, just in case it was discovered. I can no longer see them as my blood relatives. And there's this. Camila said, pulling out an IC recorder from her pocket. I had this just to make it clear that I was uninvolved. When she pressed play, the recording started, revealing conversations between Henry and my mother in the hotel, along with them bad-mouthing and complaining about me. The voices were unmistakably theirs. Camila probably prepared it to prove her innocence in case she was sued for compensation. Suddenly, Henry, who had been silent until then, started shouting.
She forced herself on me. I refused many times, but every time I went to your house, she clung to me, so I just gave in.
Then, my mother retorted, "You were the one who said you found an older woman more attractive than a young wife. Stop lying. Just because you're a bit younger, don't get cocky." They both started arguing selfishly, but who seduced whom first hardly mattered anymore. Well, I'm leaving. I still have work to do. This has nothing to do with me anymore. Good luck, Charlotte, said Camila, getting up to leave with her bag. Wait, Camila. You're not innocent. You're just as guilty. You betrayed me too.
What did you say?
I won't forgive Henry and Mom, of course. They'll pay for what they did. But Camila, you knew everything and still participated in the deception. You're equally to blame. Be prepared, I'll be suing all three of you for compensation. You're going to regret deceiving and betraying me for the rest of your lives. A few days later, I hired the detective agency again and discovered that on the same day Henry used the hotel, my mother had visited him there, just at different times. At the same time, I also proceeded with the divorce proceedings from Henry and, using the IC recorder recordings Camila made as evidence, I successfully claimed a substantial amount in alimony from both Henry and my mother. It later came to light that Camila's own divorce was due to her infidelity. Now, it's entirely believable that she's capable of such actions. It turned out that she had agreed to act as a decoy in exchange for financial help from our mother, as she was struggling with money and being sued for alimony by her ex-husband. Camelia still has lingering feelings for her husband several years after their separation and has been pressing him to get back together with her, but he seems to be adamantly refusing to do so. I feel sorry for him, being pestered by Camila. I hope he finds someone better and finds happiness he deserves. As for Henry, his recovery from the injury was quicker than expected, and he was discharged from the hospital soon after the incident. He had the physical strength, considering how he had shouted in the hospital room. However, I heard that his position at work had become quite terrible after his return. The information about Henry's affair with my mother had already spread throughout the company, leading to his demotion to a subsidiary in a remote area. The news had reached there as well, and I heard he's been feeling quite marginalized. Removed from the path of promotion, the once respected Henry now appeared worn and haggard. They say rumors die quickly, but I hope the rumors about Henry's scandal continue for a long time. My mother, still unable to use both legs and confined to a wheelchair, now lives under Henry's care. He suffers humiliation at work and comes home to face my mother's sarcasm. In all my life, has there ever been a situation in which the word self-inflicted has been so aptly applied? I've decided to cut ties with my family and will have nothing more to do with them, not even visiting to check on them.
After my divorce, I tried to distance myself from love and marriage for a while, concentrating on work, but recently I hit it off with the president of a business partner and we are getting married again. I believe that this time we will have a long and happy life together, happier than ever.